Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. And today we're going to discuss one of the most critical roles, one of the most critical positions in public office in the defense of the rights of the people of Texas. Over the past 4 years, it was the Texas Attorney General that played a critical role, a very critical role in defending the rights of the people of Texas. But not just the rights of the people of Texas. The truth is, he defended the rights of the people everywhere. Because if Texas goes blue, the world goes blue. We are the last stand. We're the last post for any sense of individual rights, of defending the Constitution. It's here. This is the last post. If this one goes, the whole world goes. And the Attorney General knew this, and it was Ken Paxton, Attorney General Ken Paxton, that fought that fight with every inch of his abilities that he could muster up. And he played a critical role. And just to give you an idea, Ken Paxton, through the Attorney General post, put the Biden administration on defense. And when you go on defense, you can't win anymore. You have to win on offense. But what Ken Paxton did is he sued the Biden administration and their lawless agenda attacking the state of Texas over and over again with an incredible success rate. Incredible. And in addition to that, it was Ken Paxton that fought harder than any public official in the land, in all 50 states, to defend election integrity. And when he did so, he saved whatever integrity we had left in our elections in the state of Texas. And because of that, Texas stayed red. If he did not do that, we would have lost Texas. Ken Paxton is the reason we lost Texas. The Texas Attorney General role is, again, it played the most critical role, one of the most critical roles in the defense of this country over the past 4 years. And it's a new day. And Ken Paxton is moving on to higher office. He's seeking a position in the U.S. Senate. And so now, us Texans, we have to decide who we're going to hand that baton off to. It is quite a responsibility that we have to get this right. Because if we don't get that right, then this issue is back on our shoulders. It's staring us right in the face. So it's very important that we get that right. And so here at our show, what we're going to do is we're going to interview these candidates. And today we have one candidate, Aaron Reitz. And Aaron, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Aaron Reitz here. How are you?
Okay, good to see you. Well, thank you for being on the show. You heard me give a description of the position of Attorney General, of how I view it.
Yeah.
But tell me, did I get that opening monologue right? Tell me just what you think about that.
Yeah, look, I think you crushed the opening monologue. I totally agree that the Attorney General of Texas is imbued with massive amounts of constitutional, statutory, administrative, and common law powers that, as Texans, we've just sort of been blessed by the way in which Attorney General Paxton has led the office and used those lawful powers to advance law and order, to do justice in Texas, to defend Texans' constitutional rights. But as you rightly said, to go on offense when we've got the enemies of liberty, the enemies of the Constitution that are trying to turn Texas into something that it's not. Now, I was very privileged. Of the 4 years of the Biden administration, I was Paxton's deputy for 3 of those years. And during that time, he always referred to me, even to this day, he refers to me as his offensive coordinator. So he was the head coach. I was the offensive coordinator, chiefly charged with managing an extremely robust and complicated docket of Texas v. Biden. That was my baby. I like to say that when I was a deputy under Paxton, that I sued the 46th president of the United States 46 times. We won 85% of those cases, a huge win rate. And so, look, I think you're not wrong I think you're exactly right, actually, about how important the AG's office is. I think the other really important thing for voters that are listening to me right now, Texans haven't had to choose an AG for over a decade. And so now voters are going to the polls and they're critically re-examining, okay, what exactly, they have a sense of the AG, and then he fights for Texas in court. He fights for Texans' constitutional rights in court. He sues Democrats and he, and that sort of thing. But I always remind people on the trail, under Article 4, Section 22 of the Texas Constitution, it says that the Attorney General shall represent the state of Texas in all courts and pleas. This is a legal, executive branch, law enforcement job, imbued, as I said before, with massive amounts of power. And so in this race, there are 4 opponents in this race, but I am the only one in this race with actual experience litigating, investigating, suing, defending, and appealing on all the major issues that you and your listeners care about. And look, my opponents, I'm sure we have a good time this evening talking with each other. We'll get into it. But my 3 opponents are legislators, and they may have good or bad, relatively speaking, legislative records. But what they don't have even a sliver of is the experience that is relevant to the office for which we are all applying. This is why, for example, when I most recently served in the Trump administration, in the presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed role of the Office of Legal Policy, as the head of the Office of Legal Policy, President Trump, when he nominated me, he said, Aaron Reitz is a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. It's exactly why Attorney General Paxton, just 2 weeks ago, gave me his complete and total endorsement and went so far as to say that Aaron Reitz will make the greatest Attorney General the state of Texas has ever seen. That's what Texans want as their next AG. It's why I'm in this race, and it's why I'm the only guy that's going to be able to keep his foot on the gas, and the only guy that's going to be able to handle this high horsepower vehicle that Paxton's going to be turning over to his successor.
Aaron, I want to talk about all that stuff, but I want to jump back before that, and let's talk about who you are as a person. Tell us about who you are, where you're from, your background, everything of that sort.
Yeah. Well, look, most recently, I'm currently an attorney at a private law firm representing private clients here in Austin. In fact, I'm talking to you right now from my office in Austin. But immediately before this, I was the presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed head of the Office of Legal Policy at the Justice Department under President Trump and Attorney General Bondi. And when President Trump nominated me, he said, Aaron Reitz is a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. Why? Because he looked at that background. He saw, first and foremost, somebody from San Antonio, where both my wife and I are from. In fact, we met on the school bus in middle school. We started dating senior year in high school. As I was telling you before we got on, Chris, I saw my hair start to thin in my 20s. I said, I got to move fast, man. I can't go into my 30s like this. So I found a great young woman. We got married right after we graduated college. I went to Texas A&M University, was in the Corps of Cadets, commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps, spent 5 years on active duty, went to Afghanistan once to the Northern Helmand Province, got out as a captain, went to the University of Texas for law school, was very involved in the conservative legal movement, even back then as a student activist. I clerked on the Texas Supreme Court under now Chief Justice Jimmy Blacklock. I was in private practice for several years, and then I joined Attorney General Paxton as his deputy AG for legal strategy, managing really the Texas v. Biden docket on all the major issues that we care about, but not just the Texas v. Biden docket, really all of the sort of headline-making litigation, investigations, and appeals that the state was involved in. I was primarily responsible for under Attorney General Paxton's leadership. Did that for 3 years, and then I joined Senator Ted Cruz as his chief of staff. Did that for 2 years before being elevated into the senior ranks of the Justice Department at the Trump administration. On a personal note, we live here in Austin. We've lived here fairly consistently since 2014. Still married to my high school sweetheart. We're about to hit 16 years, actually, next 2 weeks from now. And so I promise we'll take time off the campaign trail to properly celebrate that. And we have 4 kids together, 1 boy, 3 girls, age 13, 11, 5, and 3. And we're a mission-oriented family. We are a faith-filled family. We're very involved in our local church. And we're all true believers in what I'm running on. We believe in this mission. We believe in Texas. We believe in law and order. And we believe in the strengths that I bring to the table as the true MAGA candidate in this race.
Did you say that you were in Afghanistan?
Yes, I deployed to Musa Qala in the Northern Helmand Province of Afghanistan with 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 2-4, the Magnificent Bastards.
So you were infantry?
No, logistics officer, but in an infantry battalion. And so we got, and I was specifically assigned to our battalion's embedded training team. So I lived with the Afghan National Army. I worked with them. I was our battalion's chief liaison to the ANA, the Afghan National Army, and have a lot of wild experiences. My son, actually, who's now 13, was born while I was there. And so I met him when he was about 4 or 5 months old. And it was that experience. I mean, look, I'm proud of the fact that I went. I'm proud of my service. I loved my time in the Marines. There's really nothing like being a young man in your 20s leading Marines and being with those guys. And I loved it. But when I missed my son's birth, that's when I knew, I don't know if God is calling me to 20 or 30 years. I think this was an adventure for my 20s. And so took the LSAT and got out. But yes, I was there, one of the second to last battalions in that region in the Helmand province. And it was a wild time. It was fun. Had a lot of fun memories from that time.
And you flew into Afghanistan through the Manas Air Force Base in Kyrgyzstan?
Yes, actually. Yeah. And that's where we, I remember that really well. I remember the food being exceptional. It's in fact, on our way back home, after you've kind of been eating like whatever leftovers are available on the Afghan side, you come back and you kind of do, 3 or 4 days of detox before you then get on a plane and go to Germany and then you go home. And I remember that. I mean, I haven't heard, Chris, I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard the word Manas in like a few years. And so it's like, it's giving me these memories. I have all these memories of being with the guys, going back home, and that feeling that you have of sort of nervousness before you go, and then that feeling of just absolute relief and carefree and just, all that weight, all that tension off of you when you're out of harm's way and you're going back home. You're going to be back home in just a few days. It was incredible.
Yeah, I went off topic a little bit there. I did
That's okay. No, I love it.
I was not military. I did consulting in Kyrgyzstan before, like when 9/11 happened. I was there, and I flew through Manas before it became a military Air Force base. But anyways, I've had my time in that country too. Incredible place.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, I think it's important though, because look, as voters are distinguishing among the candidates. I mean, look, I think that where we were when we had an opportunity to serve matters to voters. And, I'm the only guy in this race that has served. I'm the only guy in this race that has had to raise his right hand and say, I solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution against the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and had to wear a uniform and carry a gun to fulfill that oath. And so I think that experience formed me as a man. It formed me as an attorney. It formed me as a leader, sort of in the public space, and it's that same sort of intensity and that focus, that mission-driven mentality, that devotion to my oath to the Constitution, that in many ways has never left, and it's what's guiding me to this office that I'm now pursuing. 9/11 happened when I was a freshman in high school. That sort of ages me a little bit, but that shaped my teen and my college years of my 20s. And I think that voters want to see somebody who raises their hand and is ready and willing to serve and to put himself in harm's way if needed to do it. And in this race, there's 4 candidates, a crowded field, but I'm the only guy that's done it. I think that matters to voters.
And I think that the experience of serving your country, going to a far off land that your parents probably never even heard of when you told them you were leaving. Yeah. And then that experience of going over there and meeting new cultures, new people, and of course, all the other challenges you had while you were there. It has to shape you in a way, your foundations in a way that really just sort of makes you distinct, in my opinion.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I totally like to think so. I think, I took that oath to support and defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic, with the knowledge that we were at war in 2 fronts, Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm a little bit too young to have made it to Iraq. A lot of my guys who are a little bit older than me were able to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. But that oath is deadly serious to me. I don't think it's any less serious as I'm now pursuing public office. I think my opponents look at it as sort of career opportunities, or the next rung in the ladder, or an opportunity to kind of increase statewide name ID to fund their political coffers for some other ambition that they may have. But this thing is deadly serious. I have been not only fighting in like physical combat, but legal combat for the past decade. This is really serious stuff. And look, I don't mean to be a downer or be too serious about it. I'm a happy warrior. We like to have fun on the campaign trail. This is a high momentum, high energy, fun campaign to be a part of. But this is real stuff. You can't just put a politician who may have like a voting record and photo ops with bills into this mission essential role. This role, as you said during your opening monologue, Chris, is like so powerful. We can't give the keys to this office over to somebody who needs training wheels or who doesn't have the battle scars to show that they've been in legal combat. And I'm the only one who has those scars. I'm the only one that doesn't need the training wheels. I'm not saying that my opponents are bad people. I'm just saying that they're applying for the wrong job. And I think voters are learning that as they're critically re-examining, what is it that this job do? What does the Constitution say that the AG does? We love what Paxton has done, but now we're looking again at sort of an open race. And I think voters are really gravitating to my background, what I have to offer, the people that I've worked for, what President Trump has said about me, what Attorney General Paxton has said about me. And they can trust that I'm going to vigorously defend the rights of Texas as a state, of Texans, and as you also rightly said, Chris, during your monologue, just because of the sheer size of this office, it's the largest red state law firm in the country.
With a target on it.
With a target, this office has the opportunity, it has the ability to literally shape American law and jurisprudence. That's not an exaggeration. And so you need somebody who's done it, who's been in legal combat, knows what they're doing, and knows how to go on offense against the enemies that deserve it and defend what we have here in the Lone Star State against the enemies that are coming after us.
I've said regularly that when the Australians go to bed at night, they pray that Texas stays red. Because if Texas goes blue, the world goes blue, the world goes dark. And it's countries like Australia that you just turn the lights out, shut it down, it's gone. That position of AG played a critical role in defending, in my opinion, the people of the world, in my opinion. I don't think that's overstated.
No, I actually don't think it's overstating it because, I mean, there is an absolute logical link. And you often hear people say, as goes Texas, so goes the nation, right? That is 100% true. But there's another link there, which is as the nation goes, so goes the world. And so if you just sort of connect those few dots, it's not an exaggeration to say that we've got to make sure that Texas stays a bastion of liberty, of freedom, of order, law, justice. Because if we don't, the country falls. If the country falls, the world falls.
So tell me again what... I'm sorry, please.
Well, then we cede power to our enemies. I mean, China wants nothing more than, and Russia wants nothing more, but China in particular, than for the United States, than American supremacy to wane. And if Texas supremacy wanes, then American supremacy wanes, and China just begins plotting its next step in its 1,000-year, march to global hegemony. And that's not going to happen on my watch. It'll probably happen under my opponent's watch because they just don't have the record to give anybody confidence that they're going to fight or that they even know what they're doing. And so this is why I'm going for this office, because this is how important. These are the stakes, Chris. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that the enemies of the world are buzzing around this election. And if they can, if the wrong person gets in there, they smell opportunity, and we could be in a really bad way. Okay, so real quick, when you were with Attorney General, you were the quarterback of his team. Tell me if I described that right, what position did you play? What was your role there?
So I was the offensive coordinator.
Okay. Offensive coordinator, okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, depending on the play that we had, we assigned different quarterbacks. We had a million different routes that we have our receivers running. We have a whole bunch of different routes that our running backs are running. We may be throwing Hail Marys. We may be just inching down the field, 2 yards at a time. It just depends. But we had a very robust offensive playbook. And just depending on the nature of the team we were playing or the enemy that we were dealing with at the time, you just flip to a different piece of the huge offensive playbook that we were running. So, whether it was election integrity or free speech or religious liberty or border security or Second Amendment stuff or 10th Amendment states' rights or environmental overreach, over-regulations, pro-energy work, you name the issue. I mean, pro-life stuff, pro-values, pro-family, you name the issue. And I have initiated either an investigation, an affirmative plaintiff side lawsuit. I have arrayed troops even on defense, even though I was the offensive coordinator. Sometimes I got to play defensive coordinator. The proper defense when the left was coming after us. And then after those things either are resolved or not resolved at the district court level, which is sort of your front line, you got to take this stuff up on appeal. So coordinating appellate teams. And look, if we couldn't bring a lawsuit, if a lawsuit wasn't ready and we needed to launch an investigation, we would investigate you. And in order to launch an investigation, you have to have a basis under state law or federal law to do it. And so, look, there's some slippery enemies out there. And sometimes you can hammer them with a lawsuit. Other times you got to go after them and start pulling at the threads in the form of an investigation. And, so look, you and your viewers may have certain particular interests, whatever they may be. Obviously, border security, I think, played a huge role just because of Joe Biden opening up the floodgates for the invasion of tens of millions of illegal aliens. So that was a huge part of my docket. Election integrity was massive. I was Paxton's deputy when the November 2020 election happened. And Paxton and I filed Texas v. Pennsylvania in the United States Supreme Court in December of 2020 to challenge on constitutional grounds the manner in which 4 states ran their elections. There were a lot of fraud lawsuits that were going on out there, and a lot of good, some bad. Look, fraud is very, very hard to prove in a court of law because you have to show intent, and intent is notoriously difficult to prove to a judge or a jury. And so it's not like there wasn't fraud happening. There was. We all know it. We're not going to believe anybody who tells us to ignore our lying eyes about what we all saw happening around the country. But we decided as a state to bring a clean constitutional claim, arguing that these states violated the Constitution's Electors Clause by using COVID as a pretext to usurp the state legislative prerogatives. So we brought that up to the Supreme Court. That's when I first met with the president in the Oval Office in December of 2020. That was the beginning of what is now a robust relationship with him and his team. But even COVID stuff, like COVID, when I joined Paxton in 2020, remember the COVID lockdowns that were happening in all the major cities. I live in Austin. Austin was one of the worst offenders. You're in Fort Bend County and near Harris County.
It was horrible here.
Horrible, right? Dallas, all the big blue cities and counties were locking down, curfews, mask mandating everything. It was terrible. And so when I was Paxton's deputy, we brought dozens of lawsuits around the state to force these states to open, or force these blue cities and counties to open. We were immensely successful in bringing those lawsuits and making sure that Texas was as open as it possibly could. Now, look, it wasn't perfect. We've got to deal with other actors in the state, but we used as much power as we could from the state AG's office to keep Texas open and to fight back against the COVID lockdowns.
What was your specific title with Attorney General Paxton?
I was the Deputy Attorney General for Legal Strategy.
Okay. Okay, can we step back for a second? You mentioned, for example, the border. What specifically did you in that role, the Attorney General, do in his role to defend the border when Biden was opening it up?
Well, I'll answer your question by illustrating it with our very first, not just our very first border lawsuit, but the very first lawsuit against the Biden administration on January 21st of 2021. So, Biden gets inaugurated after on January 20th. Meanwhile, in the weeks leading up to that, of course, one of my opponents, Chip Soy, was screaming at the president, saying he was engaging in impeachable conduct. He was standing with Mike Pence. He certified the election. He stood with Liz Cheney. He was saying that the J6 folks who were led into the Capitol by public safety officials at the time deserved to have the book thrown at them. But while one of my opponents was opposing the president, opposing the president's supporters and the MAGA movement, we were still doing everything possible to vindicate the rights of what was really, in my view, a bogus election that, at a minimum, even if it was legitimate, which I don't grant, cast a huge shadow of doubt and made the peaceful transition of power very difficult. But so
I remember
Joe Biden
that Chip Roy took a marked position that nobody agreed with in the state of Texas at a critical time in the country's history.
Of course, he abandoned Texas. He abandoned the president. He abandoned MAGA voters, and now he's on the campaign trail trying to pretend like he's hunky dory with the president. It's a total lie. It's totally fake, and Trump's supporters, which comprise the overwhelming majority of Republican primary voters, will never believe him.
And
they will never believe him. Oh, of course he did. And he said worse than that multiple times over the course of several years. It's not like this was just an aberration in January of 2021. I mean, as late as December of 2024, just several months ago, President Trump took to Truth Social and said, somebody primary this do-nothing, grandstanding, flip-flopping rhino. I mean, the guy is an egomaniac and is now traveling the state thinking that he can cash in on his higher name ID, but believing that voters are going to forget. They're not going to forget. They won't forget. Yeah. And I'll make sure that they won't forget. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump and his team at some point in the future remind voters where Chip Roy has been over the past several years. Chip Roy is the most belligerent, anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, anti-Paxton candidate in the race by a mile. And it's not even close. And Republican primary voters, fortunately, they're very smart. They're very discerning. They know exactly where he is. It's why they call him Chip Soy, because he squishes all the time. It's why they call him Flip Roy, because he's going back and forth all the time. It's sort of like an obsessive compulsive a schizophrenia when it comes to, being with the president, then against the president. He's screaming at the president, then he's sucking up to the president. We all know what's going on. But here's my point. You asked me about border security.
Yeah.
So on January 21st, the Biden administration promulgated a memo within the Department of Homeland Security to freeze all deportations for 100 days. So just a blanket freeze. And the reason, the policy basis that they gave for doing that sort of thing was, hey, look, the Trump administration was a bunch of fascists who are racist and deporting people unfairly, right? They're putting kids in cages and then they're deporting them in the same way that the Nazis did, right? Just hysterical, insane rhetoric being used, right? And so step one for this for the Biden administration was to put a blanket freeze on all deportations. So stop the planes, trains, and automobiles, stop the arrests, stop the detainers, stop everything. Don't deport anybody for 100 days until we can promulgate a new immigration policy that, of course, would become what we now know as sort of an open borders immigration policy. But on January 21st, they promulgated what we call the deportation freeze. And on that very same day, we filed our first lawsuit challenging the legality of the Biden administration's authority to just promulgate a blanket deportation freeze at the stroke of a pen. And the reason why we argued that it was unlawful is because federal immigration statutes say in at least 100 different occasions, it uses the word shall. Now, I don't want to get too wonky as a lawyer, but it's important, right? Because Texans are choosing their next lawyer. If it says in 100 different places that federal immigration authorities shall deport an alien under XYZ circumstance, right? And it says that in different provisions under 8 U.S. Code, such and such and such, right? If the Congress has given us a law that has been enacted under the proper procedures and has withstood constitutional muster, in other words, it's a legitimate statute, instructing federal immigration authorities to shall, that must deport aliens, it means that those federal immigration authorities do not have the discretion to determine on their own volition whether they can deport them or not. So if President Biden wants to say with his auto pen, hey, don't deport these aliens, but the statute says you must deport or you shall deport, well, I'm sorry, you're violating the law. And so we brought a lawsuit. We filed it on the very first day of the Biden administration. 2 days later, we got a temporary restraining order. 6 days later, we got a preliminary injunction, and we won. And then the Biden administration just sort of capitulated to the ruling of the court. They withdrew their deportation order. Now, the challenge from there, Chris, or their deportation freeze order, the challenge from there, Chris, is that they said, okay, we'll withdraw the deportation freeze, but then we're just going to keep starting to try to violate the laws in different ways, right? We're going to withhold funding on the border wall. We're going to change under federal regulations the definitions of asylum and parole, which if you expand the definition of these terms, it means just about anybody can claim asylum or parole. It means that they're going to change the nature of how chain migration happens. So you have unaccompanied alien children, UACs, who will come in typically under the supervision of an uncle, which is not actually an uncle. It's typically a gang member or a cartel member who is escorting a young child who has been coached to say the right things to get through immigration officials. And because the Biden administration changed their rules on how we handle UACs, unaccompanied alien children, we just sort of started letting them all in at a huge profit to the cartels, which over time then established, because of their ability to make money off of the open borders immigration policy, were able to gain very quickly operational control of the border. So this is just sort of a little sampling.
And so now you have a trafficking threat to every child, every woman and child in the state of Texas.
100%. And then, because once they get in, they sort of disappear into the country, right? Because local, state, and federal law enforcement under the Biden administration is then being prohibited or restricted or defunded or hamstrung from being able to go search out and investigate where the sort of alien houses are, where they gather, what hotels do they meet at, what gas stations do they exchange money or persons at. Couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, we allowed them to. They were setting in the foundations to be able to scale on an enterprise-wide level, scale the process of human trafficking, make it a normal commodity type business.
Totally right. Totally right. And so now, even with Trump in office, what's great is, look, the border is secure. We've got alignment between federal, state, and local law enforcement to be able to undo a lot of the damage that was done under the Biden administration. And we are accelerating deportation operations. We're bringing justice. We're bringing the hammer of justice against, cartel leaders and traffickers, human and drug traffickers, and so on and so forth, those who exploited the open border policy. But there's still so much work to do. And as Attorney General, I'm going to stand right at that nexus between federal immigration law enforcement and state and local law enforcement. And this administration needs, and Texans want, somebody who's already been fully vetted by the Trump administration to serve in a senior legal post at the DOJ. Somebody who's got the experience litigating, investigating, suing, defending, and appealing on border security and illegal immigration. And somebody who, you don't have to believe me, I got the endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council, which is the largest representative body of the United States Border Patrol. And they put out, and your listeners can look it up online. It's all over my social media. I got this about a month ago. And they made it very clear that, it's one thing for my opponents to have voted yes or no on border security bills. That's great. I love strong border security measures coming out of a state and federal legislature. But this ain't the job. You need an immigration litigator. You need a border security litigator. And I'm the only one with the experience there doing it under Paxton, Cruz, and at DOJ. And so, look, fortunately, I look forward. When I'm AG, I'll have 2 years with President Trump in the White House. And that's going to be a time of tremendous partnership with the Trump administration. And then in the middle of my 4-year term, there's going to be a presidential election. I'm very hopeful that a Republican will win that election in 28. But if it doesn't, we're going to have to go to war against a Democrat-held White House again. They're going to go back to exactly what they know how to do. They're going to turn the lawfare weapons back on, and we're going to have to fight back. And if Texas doesn't have an AG who's covered in the battle scars of having already been in legal combat, well, our state and our nation are going to be extraordinarily disserved.
Let's remind everybody, okay? It was 2020 that the Democrats dropped the Wuhan on the people of Texas. They dropped that virus on us.
Yeah.
And then it was like clockwork. It was like they had the plan built out on a whiteboard. This, that, and the other. They just all the processing to shut us down like Australia, lock us in our homes, red flag laws while we're there, start the mandatory vaccine rhetoric, scare us with the masks, take over our schools. It was a totalitarian nightmare. And they were all going for control of the elections. In Fort Bend County, in every county, they were going after control of the elections. They saw it as a political opportunity. They instigate these events. So I think everyone needs to remember that. That happened. You mentioned that you played a critical role in the Paxton administration during that time. Can you talk about what you did?
Yeah, totally. Look, I think our biggest fight was against, when I was Paxton's deputy and his offensive coordinator, our biggest fight was against these big blue cities and counties. Texas is still deeply red. That's to be very certain. However, as you know, and your listeners know, every election cycle, the left, and not just local leftists, but national leftists, begin salivating because they want to flip Texas so hard. They're dreaming of the day when they can make it happen. Now, I hope that it doesn't happen anytime soon. But if it does happen ever in our lifetimes, it will be because of unchecked abuses of power in our blue cities and our blue counties. These are where the populations are growing. Our rural communities, sadly, are not sustaining the sort of same, like they're not even holding on population. They're beginning to decline in population. And as urbanization accelerates here in Texas and the voting habits in these urban centers doesn't change to the Republican side, and as radical leftist Democrats continue to grasp the levers of power in city and state governments and in these district attorney's offices, it's going to be a huge problem for us. And so what we did back then is what I'm going to do moving forward. What we did back then is we dropped lawsuit bombs in the same way that China dropped the Wuhan virus on this country. We had to fight back and drop justice bombs on these lawless leftist Democrats who were mayors, they were county commissioners, county judges, district attorneys, school superintendents, principals, all of these political subdivisions. The mask was off. Actually, the irony is that like the triple masks were on, but in a way the mask came off because we saw what they were really like deep down inside. And we litigated and we litigated and we sued and we won and we appealed again and again and again, and we investigated you. And if we couldn't bring a lawsuit against you, we put you on public blast, and we used the bully pulpit to rally parents and small business owners to oppose you, to resist you, to vote you out of office. And we were successful both in the political arena and in the legal arena. And so that was just a picture of what I'm going to do moving forward. The threat in Texas that big blue cities and counties poses against Texas liberty, Texas law and order, against safe communities, against the Constitution, against our way of life, it's coming out of the big blue cities and counties. And so when I'm AG, I'm going to come after these guys. I already have my list of district attorneys and county commissioners that I'm going to bring a quo warranto claim against them on day one, seeking to remove them from office for serially abandoning their post, serially failing to live up to their oath and to their statutory and constitutional obligations that they have to their constituents and to their residents within their jurisdictions. We're going to remove them. That's what we're going to do. You don't have to look, by the way, all of my opponents are probably going to say something similar because they're smart. They're not dumb. They're going to say things similar. But here's the difference. I'm the only one that has done it. I'm the only one that has experience litigating against blue cities and counties in Texas and any other political subdivisions. And so you don't have to wonder what kind of an attorney general I'm going to be. I'm going to bring the hammer. You just look at my record. My opponents, they've got a legislative record. That's great. But it's completely irrelevant to the job that we are applying for. You need a fighter. Texans need a fighter. Somebody who's been in legal combat, who grew up in a lawfare environment, and who has proven himself to be a champion for law, order, justice, and liberty here in Texas. And that's me.
You just answered my next question before I asked it, but you know, we were taught from day one, from our early childhoods, that the Republicans should be the man enough party to reach across the aisle and shake the hand of your opponent. And in this day and age, that idea is dangerous, right? I cannot think of anything of value that the Democrat Party is bringing to our people, right? There's nothing that they advocate for that's in the interests of our people. It is as if they are being employed by a foreign entity, by a foreign adversary, right?
Correct.
Which I think is a very serious suspicion on the minds of a lot of Americans, and one that law enforcement needs to consider. But
100%.
With that being said, again, I think you answered the question already. Clearly, you are not that man to reach across the aisle and shake the hand of your esteemed opponent. I think that you understand the threat that we're up against, and it is, if you do a deal with the devil wins.
Yeah, that's right. Look, totally right. Look, I wish, I think part of me and all Americans, I think, wish that we could work with our dear colleagues on the other side of the aisle. But this ain't Republican Democrat feuding from 20 years ago. I mean, look, I love the monologue that Vice President J.D. Vance gave about a week ago when he was hosting Charlie Kirk's show. And he said, look, there is no unity with the ones who are dancing on Charlie Kirk's grave. There is no unity with the Democrat establishment that wants to not only mutilate the genitals of teenagers who are confused about their sexuality, but who want to mandate that you use your taxpayer dollars to do it. There is no unity with those who want to go into a woman's womb and shred an unborn child to pieces before vacuuming it out and disposing of it in the name of women's liberation. There is no unity with people who believe that this country was founded upon the rock of racism and misogyny and hatred and white supremacy. There is no unity with the people who literally want the floodgates of our border to open up because they hate Americans. They hate the English language. They hate white men and women. They hate our history.
And
I'm sorry. I can't have unity with these people. Now, look, if there's a Democrat out there that wants to show me that he or she is more reasonable than I just described, well, then maybe I can work with you. But until I find the average Democrat calling out his or her party for being a radically anti-American, anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-Western civilization, anti-Israel, all that, I mean, I could keep going. If the Democrats don't start calling out their own people, I'm sorry, it's an organization and a movement I cannot reach across the aisle and work with. But they won't do it. And so I ain't working with them. I'm going to vanquish them. I'll tell you this. I gave a speech when I got sworn in at the Justice Department. earlier this spring at the West Wing. And, a lot of folks in attendance, the Attorney General was in attendance, so on and so forth. And my speech was a reflection upon the oath that I swore as a Marine officer. We talked about this earlier in the show. And the same oath that I swore as a brand new second lieutenant in the Marines was the same exact oath, 17 years later, that I swore as a presidentially appointed Senate confirmed head at the Justice Department. And it was I, Aaron Reitz, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, during the War on Terror era, which I, spent a lot of my younger years focused on, the orientation of that oath was around that foreign clause, right? Like enemies of the Constitution that are foreign, right? We all think about bad guys that want to attack the United States and so forth, right? But the oath says, and domestic. Enemies of the Constitution, both foreign and domestic. So who is contemplated in that clause? What is that? Who are the domestic enemies of the Constitution? And when I think of the modern Democrat Party, when I think of radical leftists that have captured all of the major cultural institutions of this country, I don't know, you tell me. You just lay out the evidence of what the Democratic Party is advocating for. Lay out the agenda that the mainstream corporate media stands by. Lay out what the leadership of the Democratic Party in Washington, and frankly, right here in Texas, the two leading Senate candidates for United States Senate right now, or I only mention them because they're the highest profile Democrats, right? James Talrico and Colin Allred. Look at what the two Democrat opponents in my race advocate for in the Attorney General's race. State Senator Nathan Johnson and former Galveston Mayor Joe Jaworski. Just look at their records. They are deeply, deeply anti-American. They are anti-Western. They are anti-civilizational to the core. And do I wish in sort of my nostalgic heart that I could work with them to make America better? Sure, I wish I could. But not while they're pushing whatever it is that they're pushing. I'm not going to work with you. I'm going to make sure that you lose. And I'm going to use every single weapon at my disposal as the Attorney General of Texas, whether they be constitutional, statutory, administrative, regulatory, or common law, or even just political, to make sure that Texas is not a place where leftism can take root even for a day. That's my commitment as the next AG, and my record proves that I'm the only guy in this race who knows even how to do that job.
Getting back to your comments, they are the smoothest criminals on earth. And
right.
Over in Fort Bend County, they had this series of events that all seemed to be all just happenstance, right? Where all of a sudden the Trump supporters of Fort Bend were being labeled by our county officials in their capacity as a county official, all Democrats, labeling our MAGA Trump element in Fort Bend as the new terrorist, and then making the argument that the Democrats essentially have to take over county elections because this new MAGA element was going to do voter intimidation. Now, my point is this, it's all a bunch of nonsense. And when you have somebody that is a plan that was laid out on a whiteboard. And when you have public officials that are conspiring against their constituents, when we put them in the office, we give them the honor of having that office, we fund that office, and then they weaponize it against us, that's criminal. Is that what? Is it treason? Is it the RICO Criminal Conspiracy Act? I don't know. I'm not the attorney. But I don't know how that could be legal. And now they all want to forget about it. They're all putting the cowboy hats on, the cowboy boots, because they see that, this leftist demonic agenda is not popular anymore, and they're hoping we forget about it as they all of a sudden find their love in Texas. I didn't forget. People aren't forgetting in Fort Bend.
No, and people aren't going to forget, and I can guarantee you that as Attorney General, I won't forget either. And what, look, I am so moved, obviously, when I learned of the assassination of Charlie Kirk at the hands of somebody who was groomed. In fact, he was bred by this conspiracy of the left to do exactly what he did. He was given the permission structure, the rhetoric, the propaganda, the intellectual framework to commit that assassination. Democrats were complicit in that. They were co-conspirators in what I would consider to be an incitement to violence. Now, whether that amounts to a violation of law, we'll see what the judge and jury says. But as far as I'm concerned, it warrants a full scope investigation to get to the bottom of this conspiracy, of this network. That's what it is. It is a network, and it's extremely well funded by both foreign influences, domestic influences, both in America and in Texas, America generally and in Texas in particular. And as AG, I've got two things that my opponents don't have. Number one, I fundamentally understand the nature of the enemy. This is important. It's more of an intellectual exercise. But what you won't hear from my opponents is the sort of zeal about the nature of the modern left that you're hearing me talk about today. They don't know how. They don't have it in them. They don't have the fire in their belly. They don't get it. Especially the two local politicians that may be listening into this show right now, Joan Huffman and Mays Middleton. They have no idea what they're doing fighting the left. Not the slightest idea. They've never been punched in the mouth, either physically or politically. They don't understand what time it is. And they will not be able to join with the Trump administration. I love the statements that the president and the vice president, the deputy White House chief of staff, Stephen Miller, so many others have put out that rightly define the nature of the left. I get it. My career, my writings, my speeches, my long history in legal combat shows I know the nature of the left. That's the first thing. And the second thing that I've got that my opponents don't have is experience. Is experience going after the enemies of our Constitution in a legal capacity. And that's critical. You can't just fumble around searching for the keys in your pocket, or, oh, bad guy's coming. Where's my gun? How do I turn off the safety? Oh no, how do I aim? How does the trigger work? My opponents, that's what's going to happen when they enter the arena and engage in legal combat. I don't have to deal with those problems. I know exactly where the guns are placed. I know exactly how to use this armory of legal weapons. I know exactly how to engage the enemy with the various tools that are at our disposal. And that is going to be essential, because if we miss a beat, if Texans vote for the wrong attorney general, if we get somebody who's not battle tested, who's not ready for this office, the left, as you rightly said earlier, Chris, is going to see a weakness. They're going to see a gap. They're going to see an ability to get their foot in the door, and they're going to exploit that weakness. But if I'm AG, there will be no exploitation, and we're going to continue to defeat the left when I'm AG.
I want to make one point. I want to let you go, get back to your family. But in that description of the sinister schemes of the left, you said the word that they were working with foreign actors. If they were working with foreign actors, conspiring with foreign actors, because to me it's obvious at the local level in our local counties, Democrats were conspiring with foreign actors. And if that's the case, it should go beyond the attorney general. It should go to a military tribunal.
All of that's on the table. And if we're dealing with foreign influences, which I think your intuition is exactly right, that's my intuition as well, then you've got nobody better than to launch a full scope investigation into what's going on in this state, and somebody who can partner actually with federal authorities, lawyers and law enforcement alike. Look, I served directly under Attorney General Pam Bondi. FBI Director Kash Patel is a very good friend of mine. These are guys. Texans need an attorney general who on day one can call his allies in the Trump administration and get to work in a big way and coordinate our efforts in a single direction. My opponents do not have that ability. I do. Texans deserve that sort of experience. We need it to get the job done. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to your point, Chris, if the foreigners absolutely know that the Democratic Party is their party that they can work with. Democrat leaders in this state and our nation love foreigners, and they hate Americans. And they want to undo Americans. They want to make life difficult for Americans. And when I'm AG, we're not going to have any more of that.
Well, Aaron, I apologize. The conversation's getting incredibly good now, but I do not want to keep you any later. It's
That's
after
okay,
8
brother.
o'clock. You got
Next
your family
time.
at home waiting for you. So
I'll make it home by bedtime. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you one thing. You clearly are a fighter. You were coming through that screen when you were getting worked up. So certainly I can see what you're saying. When you're in that legal battlefield, you got to be sharp, you got to be crisp, you got to be on mark, pick those words perfectly. And I think that you made that clear that you're ready to do that. I think that we got to cut the strings and let you at them.
You got to let me off the leash, man. I mean, that's right. If you think that the energy is high just on the campaign trail, wait until I'm sworn in January 2027. It's going to get pretty fun.
Okay, listen, again, I don't want to. You and I will keep this small chat going on forever. I want to let you go, but man, I want to see you again before this election. So I hope to.
Let's do it again soon, for sure.
On the show or on the campaign trail. I want to get your word. I want to talk with you again. This is a great hour.
Absolutely, brother. We will definitely talk again soon. And anytime I can make it either in studio or here by Zoom, let's do it.
Great. Thank you again. Go home, see your family. I appreciate your time.
All right, brother Chris. Thanks to you and your listeners. Take care.
Have a good night.
You too.